Hey, if you're a fan of Kiss or just like the stories and personalities, I think you'll really enjoy what I have for you here today. And a side note, I tried to explain this to somebody the other day. Being a fan of Kiss is not just I like Kiss music, because a lot of people hate their music, but the epic adventure of Kiss is in many ways just as interesting as listening to music, because this story is so interesting from its outset all the way up until the end, and all the drama and all the stuff that happened. And it's just kind of a fascinating thing. These people, these personalities, the experiences, the stories, the ups and downs. It's one of those bands that's just, don't have to like the music. It's just an interesting, epic adventure following Kiss. One of the reasons that I am a fan. I admit I love their music. I've been into them since I was a little kid, and that's probably why I love a lot of their music. But the epic adventure of Kiss is in some ways just as cool as the music, where you're just kind of interested in what happened with them. And that's part of what makes this article interesting, because this is a look into, in some ways, the mind of Gene Simmons back in 1978. And if you're watching this, you can see the headline before I've even read it to you. The headline of this article is, "You have to have a large ego to do this." And it's from the Lexington Herald Leader, January 29th, 1978, page 54. And part of the reason I was kind of looking for things related to Gene Simmons, because he's been out lately. We're filming this particular video on December 15th of 2024. I don't always bring up the date, because with the stuff we do here, it just doesn't matter. We're talking about things that happened 50 years ago in many cases, so it's kind of timeless, the information. But the reason I was doing some searches on him is because there was a movie that came out recently called Reagan. I haven't seen it. I actually want to, because I was a kid when he was the president. But okay, anyway, apparently, I just found out that Gene Simmons actually did some music for that movie. So Gene Simmons is making the rounds right now. I was wondering why, because all of a sudden I'm seeing Gene in all these interviews all over the place. I'm thinking, what? And then I just found out that he was actually did some music for that movie. So anyway, he's out talking, doing interviews, and being Gene Simmons. And apparently, he's going to be going on a tour with the Gene Simmons band. And I when I was a kid, I was always a fan of Paul Stanley and Paul Stanley's voice. But over the years, I've kind of warmed up to Gene's voice more, and to him as a stage presence. There's something, I've grown to appreciate him more than when I was a kid, it was Paul. He was my favorite. But over the years, set the ego aside, it's just, he's an interesting character. And listening to his philosophies and talking, it's just kind of fun. Anyway, don't mean to get off on that. Okay, and I've gained an appreciation for him, so I find this stuff pretty interesting. So the title of this article is "You Have to Have a Large Ego to Do This." And so let me dive into this. And like I said, I think you'll have some fun listening to this. Okay, they bill themselves as superheroes and as the hottest little band in the world. That may seem a trifle hyperbolic, but there can be little doubt that Kiss has been the hottest thing in Lexington in a couple of weeks. Considering the weather, however, it may not be much of a claim. Of Lexington's recent weather problems, Gene Simmons summarizes, "You know it's bad when the groupies won't come back to the hotel with you." On the day after Kiss's latest Lexington concert, Simmons, cleansed of his outrageous stage makeup, looks anything but super heroic. He looks pale, tired, and grumpy. It's been a long American tour. Fortunately, it's nearly over. In March, Kiss goes to Japan for 7 Tokyo concerts. Then they'll have a tour hiatus, during which time the band members will produce solo albums and star in a rock version of The Phantom of the Opera for NBC television. And everybody that's a Kiss fan knows what happened here. We had the 4 solo albums, which was kind of a preventive measure from seeing the band fall apart. You know, it kind of gave an outlet for like Ace to be able to go do a solo project, but they kept it under Kiss, the Kiss name. But then it ended up creating its own set of problems. And then, of course, Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park, and and I have an article I found where it's so funny, that show. As a kid, I'm sure many of you, I could not wait for that to come on TV. I was so excited for it. And as an undiscerning child, we didn't realize how just absolutely terrible that movie was. But on a personal level, I am so glad that movie just exists. However silly and ridiculous it was, we're all blessed that movie is just, that it exists for us to enjoy in its silliness. Okay. A little power chording from Kiss and the Phantom will give up Zap and Zowie. The music critic has labeled the sounds that Kiss produces mood music if you happen to be in the mood to blow up buildings. Rebellion has long been part and parcel of the rock and roll movement, and Kiss makes no changes. The group's music is so basic that it creates the suspicion that musically, at least, Kiss is an acronym meaning keep it super simple. That's not the case, according to press office spokeswoman Julie Harrison, who says that Kiss is just a term of endearment. Also, it's an easy name to remember. She pointed out that the Kiss logo was designed by the group, with the double S ending symbolizing lightning bolts. That's not the interpretation of some folks on Kiss's European tour, however. In Germany, Kiss was barred from using its giant logo because the double S design was too reminiscent of the Nazi secret police emblem. And by the way, Kiss fans will know this, but some people who watch this that don't know, a lot of the European versions of the Kiss albums would often have the S. Instead of those lightning bolt looking things, they would turn it into what looked like basically Z's, backwards Z's for the S's on Kiss, for this reason. Let's see here. Kiss performed in public for the first time 5 years ago this month. In the beginning, it has been written they performed for a paltry $30. How times have changed. Kiss's secret to success is really no secret at all. It's show business. They put on a nearly incredible show, and they are all business. Audiences are scientifically sampled and demographic breakdowns studied with care. Kiss fan club is changing, Simmons indicates, enlarging. And that's actually a funny statement because their demographics at this point were changing dramatically. Because while they started out having a certain attitude, which was really hypersexualized in truth, reminiscent maybe of kind of, I mean, you look at Paul Stanley and he looks like he's borrowing from, Rocky Horror Picture Show in some ways. I mean, it kind of, what I mean by that is it fits into that world. And by the time, the reason I say that, and you can tell by the lyrics too, boy, some of the lyrics, when I was a kid, I had no idea what these lyrics were saying. And as an adult, I go back and listen to it, I go, whoa, I was 8 years old listening to that. But the interesting thing that was happening with the demographics here, because you're talking about 1978, is you had people like me, who was an 8-9-year-old kid who was watching and listening to these guys. So their demographics were going from this teenage rebellion, this hypersexualized, whatever they were doing there when they first started, that all of a sudden you have 7-year-old kids that are going to their concerts, which is not what they had planned. Okay, so several years ago, he says, a Kiss concert audience was largely in the 14 to 18 age group and 70-80% male. Currently, he reports, they draw an audience from 9 to 30, give or take a few years at either end. Which represents the sexes about equally. Quote, the kids seem to like it loud, is Simmons' only public comment on Kiss's sound and fury. And one must assume that Simmons knows what he's talking about when it comes to kids. Former school teacher. A former 6th grade teacher, Simmons admits that he was no more enchanted with school than his pupils were. Quote, of course I was resented, he near sneers. Teachers are always resented, at least by normal kids. They don't want to be in school. It's boring and restrictive, and kids would rather be out playing, making new friends, having fun. It's only the misfits who like school, and that's because they can't fit in with their peers. They like school because it's the only place they do fit in, unquote. A healthy respect for the 12-year-old mentality has transformed Gene from resented instructor to idol. Though he may have hated school, both as teacher and student, he has declined to discuss his own academic pursuits and refuses even to name his major field of study, saying only that he did not study music. A pronouncement which may not be a surprise. Quote, "No rock and roller studies music," he states with obvious contempt. He learned a few things on the job. What kids like, for example, and more importantly, what they'll spend their money on. And then the next subhead in the article says he hates trees. And he has something in common with the kids he taught, a low threshold for boredom. Within half an hour, he has pointedly expressed that boredom. Sipping a Fresca, he lounges in an armchair and delivers a handful of, quote, insights. He hates trees and grass, he states, and according to Gene's scheme of things, people who do enjoy a natural environment are merely responding to some prehistoric instinct, some dim memory. Did you ever notice how people go under trees in the summer? That's because we sprang from the apes, and some people still have that instinct, even though they don't consciously realize it, unquote. Some of us sprang a bit further than others, no doubt. They put in parentheses here. For a man with such a speedy put-down of, quote, prehistoric instincts, Simmons selected an odd stage persona. His working getup has been described as bird, reptile, vampire. It's part kabuki, part pterodactyl, about as primordial as one can get. Quote, "I don't think I picked the character, I think it picked me," he claims. "It's my dark side. I guess it's a true reflection of a part of me," unquote. Gene looks pained when questioned about the reasons for the outlandish makeup. It's a gimmick and everybody knows it's a gimmick. His expression says, "So what's the deal?" Quote, "And I didn't always look like I do now," he reveals. "When we first started out, I just had a couple of round circles around my eyes and a lot of purple lipstick," unquote. "I envision a panda in drag." That's just something the writer just put in there. Does he agree that his persona is a little more, a trifle necrophilous? Sure, so what? Does he mind that he comes across as a sexist? Quote, "A sexist? Sure I am. That's a compliment. It's better than being called a vegetable. Look, you have to have a large ego to do this, to be macho all the time on stage and not be a chauvinist. It'd be impossible," unquote. An uncomfortable silence. That's the next subhead. Would he be as proud to be termed a racist, I ask, his apparent sexist pride having struck a feminist nerve? A long, uncomfortable silence ensues. Quote, "I guess I'd have to say that I'm as susceptible to the prejudices which affect us as anyone," he admits. "But you can't go around pinning labels on people. Sexist, racist, who cares?" Unquote. His 6-foot, now lean frame tenses when the subject of fans is broached. Quote, "They love us and we love them. They're great and we're great," is all he wants to say, though he has made it perfectly clear that he literally loves a select few of the female gender. But when it comes to offstage appearances, Gene closets himself away from his following. 3 Lexington youths, Danny Lane, 19, Ricky Poe, 20, and Bobby Rolfe, 19, have discovered Kiss's whereabouts. They knocked on Simmons' door and requested autographs, they say, and were told to come back in 10 minutes. When they return, they are greeted by one of the band's security people, the type whose physical presence alone is sufficient to discourage an approach. Refuses autograph. Later, a Delta stewardess tells me Simmons has told a child aboard the Lexington to Cincinnati flight on which they departed, they are not Kiss. Let's see here. Quote, "I told him I thought that was pretty mean," she said. "It was just one little kid, and he only wanted an autograph, but he," she gestured to Gene, seated alone in the first pair of the seats in first class, "said he was tired and wanted to be left alone," unquote. Someday, of course, the fickleness of fans and the fleeting quality of stardom will combine, and Simmons, Stanley, Fraley, and Chris will be left alone. Oh, sorry, there's an emphasis in there. And Chris will be left alone. Gene, according to a concluding quotation in a December Playboy article, is ready. Quote, "I don't think I'll be putting on limited kiss shows when I'm 50 years old and in the insane asylum the way everybody keeps telling me. I can just imagine myself balding 55, in an insane asylum. I can still breathe fire. Watch, I used to be in Kiss," unquote. That's so funny to think about. 55. Because what is he now? 70, 72, 73, something like that. So I mean, this is almost 50 years ago when he's making this comment. He's in his 20s at this point. Let's see here. "Till then, with luck, the fans will be as loyal as Danny Lane. He kept on waiting that snowy day at the Hilton Inn, and after nearly 5 hours of lobby time, he came away with autographs from Simmons and Stanley, who were eventually cornered in the coffee shop. Was the wait worth it? Oh yeah, I can understand it. There are always people hanging around trying to see him. I don't blame him for trying to have some privacy," he said. And what did he think about their bare-face appearance? "I don't know," he confesses in a puzzled tone. "I guess they look more human without their makeup, but they still look pretty funny." They'll go on looking funny, I'm sure, all the way to the bank. And that is the end of the article. Anyway, I thought you'd find that kind of interesting. Again, I think these things are interesting because they're little snippets into this world that's kind of, well, I mean, it's 50 years ago. And I was a little kid, I didn't, to me, they were superheroes. I liked the energy of the music. I liked the personas. I liked the visuals and all the other stuff. And I mean, at this point in 1978, me and buddies would grab tennis rackets and go down to the basement and put on Kiss Alive and just pretend we were in concert being Kiss. And so, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this video did that same kind of thing. But it is interesting listening to these insights of what was happening at the time and how Gene kind of perceived who they were and what they were doing, and the changing, especially in 1978, man, the changing demographic. And now that we have retrospect, and here we are in 1978, we know what's about to happen. We know what's coming. You got the solo albums, you got that movie, and then you've got Dynasty, and then you got the whole thing falling apart. And we all, that's all right ahead of them. And it's so interesting now to read this stuff, knowing what's right around the corner for these guys. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that stuff. I get a huge kick out of these things. And please, if you aren't following this channel, please follow the channel. And if you're a Kiss fan, I'm sure you know other people that are Kiss fans that would enjoy hearing this little view into Gene Simmons' mind and his life back at this early stage, and share it with them. And of course, like the video. I'd love to get your feedback. If you went to any of these concerts, if you were not just paying attention during that time, because a lot of us were, we were very small. If you saw them during these concerts, if you were there, and were you there early on and then witness the changing demographic? And what was that like, watching that whole thing as it just evolved and changed from that really edgy, hypersexualized kind of thing they were doing early on, and within a few years evolving into comic book superheroes for children, which is kind of what it turned into in many ways. Anyway, I'd love to get your feedback on that. And with that, as always, have yourself a fantastic day.